بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed. Okay, today inshallah we will begin Kitab al-Salah. As we said before, Imam ibn Qudamah divides the book of al-Umdat into kutub wa abwab. Kutub is the plural of kitab. Kitab means a book. Abwab is the plural of bab. Bab means chapter. Bab means gate, door, but you know it means chapter. It's a door from ignorance to knowledge, or a gate from ignorance to knowledge. We said before that the kutub and the abwab are not necessarily sub books, or they are not necessarily under the book. So it's not divided into books, and every book is divided into chapters. It's just that whenever a particular topic is long enough, he calls it kitab, and then when it is short to be called bab, he calls it bab. And when it is shorter, that it is not a bab in and of itself, but it is a subtopic, then he calls it fasl, or a subtopic. So, but it is not, it does not really follow any sort of clear-cut classification. So we're talking about Kitab al-Salah here, and Kitab al-Salah will have kutub and abwab under it, will have, books and chapters under it. He started by talking, he usually likes to start with a hadith. If you go back to the introduction, he said that he mentioned those hadith to invoke their blessing and also for their authority, or, hujjah. So to invoke the blessings of the hadith and for their authority. So he starts every chapter by, or tries to start every chapter by a hadith. In this particular book, he started Kitab al-Salah, or the book of prayers. He started by this hadith, which is reported by Abu Dawood from Ubadah ibn al-Samit رضي الله عنه. قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول خمس صلوات. Ubadah ibn al-Samit reported that he heard the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم say خمس صلوات كتبهن الله على العباد في اليوم والليلة. There are 5 prayers that Allah has required of His slaves every day and night. There are 5 prayers that Allah has required of His slaves every day and night. فَمَنْ حَافَظَ عَلَيْهِنَّ كَانَ لَهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَهْدٌ أَنْ يُدْخِلَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. He who diligently observes them, he who diligently observes them, will have a covenant with Allah that He will admit him into paradise. وَمَنْ لَمْ يُحَافِظْ عَلَيْهِنَّ, and he who does not diligently observe them, لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَهْدٌ, he will have no covenant with Allah. إِنْ شَاءَ عَذَّبَهُ وَإِنْ شَاءَ غَفَرَ لَهُ. If He wills, He will torment him, and if He wills, He will forgive him. This hadith was considered sound by Nawawi and Munziri and others. So we will come back to the implications, the meanings of this hadith, but it may not serve the dominant, this very hadith that he started with, it may not serve the dominant Hanbali position about the one who abandons the prayer out of laziness, because it does have some implications that go against the dominant Hanbali position, that the one who abandons the prayer out of laziness is kafir, in the sense of complete, kufr, like major kufr. But the hadith certainly tells us of the importance of the prayer, and we did talk about this. Remember when we were talking about when we addressed the prayer from a different perspective, from a different angle, from a more tazkiyah angle before. And we did talk a lot about the importance of the prayers, but keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created you and the one who gave you the 24 hours that you have every day and the 7 days that you have in the week, is inviting you to speak with Him, to address Him, to invoke Him, to implore Him, to have a conversation with Him 5 times every day, flexible times, you know, every day. Each prayer will take you 5 minutes or less. If you want to just to do, it could take you more if you want to like really give it, you know, that it's due right. But it may give you less if you just want to do the bare minimum. It may take you less than the 5 minutes. So the one who gave you the 24 hours that you have in your day is inviting you 5 times to stand before him 2 to 3 minutes every time, a total of 15 to 20 minutes of your day, a total of 15 to 20 minutes of the 24 hours that he gave you. He gave you the 24 hours. He created you, and he gave you the 24 hours, and he's asking you to give him 20 minutes, not for him, for you, to basically reinforce your relationship with him and to water the tree of your faith and to pull yourself out of this spinning machine of life, this pursuit of carnal pleasures and abundance that never ends, that is basically destined to destroy your faith, destroy your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you do not pull yourself out of it and reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is inviting you, he's telling you, don't do this to yourself. Don't destroy your spirit. Come and, you know, stand before me and address me and come closer to me and renew your connection with me, because you do need to renew your iman, renew your faith, you renew your sila, your connection. That's where salah comes from sila, comes from connection. Come and renew your connection with me 5 times a day, a total of 15 to 20 minutes. Those who say no to this invitation, imagine what they deserve. They deserve that we will be talking about their, you know, all the talk that we will be discussing today is about those people, tariqus salah, the one who abandons the prayer, whether he abandons this out of defiance, juhud, or out of takasul, laziness, out of tahawun, indifference. But at any rate, these are really strange people. And I do understand that people can become too lazy. But it is really, if you put things in perspective and if you think about it, that Allah who created me is asking me to stand before him 5 times, a total of 15 to 20 minutes out of the 24 hours that he gave me every day, and speak with him and renew my connection with him. And I am saying no to that invitation. I am declining that invitation. Then Imam Qudamah rahimahullah said, فَالصَّلَوَاتُ الْخَمْسُ وَاجِبَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ عَاقِلٍ بَالِغٍ إِلَّا الْحَائِضَ وَالنُّفَسَاء. Therefore, the 5 prayers are mandatory upon every adult, sane Muslim, except for the menstruating woman or the woman having postpartum bleeding. So it, you know, because for them, unlike in the case in fasting, fasting is obligatory on them, but the performance of fasting at the time of their period is prohibited. So fasting is obligatory on them, but there is a barrier, there is a mana, there is basically a hindrance to between them and the performance of fasting. Once the hindrance is removed, the obligation descends. And then it becomes obligatory on them to make up for the fasting, But salah is not obligatory on you. I'm sorry, speaking about you in the third voice, but salah is not obligatory on you. Therefore, when the hindrance is removed, you don't need to make up for the salah. That's the difference between salah and fasting. You are not being addressed by salah to begin with during this period. You're addressed by the siyam, but there is a hindrance. Once the hindrance is removed, then the siyam becomes obligatory and you have to make it up. You have a year to make it up, until the next Ramadan. But salah is not obligatory on you to begin with. And that's a very peculiar ruling, that there is an exemption here from the obligation, not just the performance. There is an exemption from the obligation. The reason why there is an exemption of the obligation is out of Allah's mercy that, it is like 6 or 7 days out of the month, 5 prayers every day. That's about 35 prayers. If you say it's like a week, 35 prayers is a little bit of a hardship to obligate the makeup or qada of 35 prayers after the period ends. But it is not that hard to make up for the 7 days of fasting, and you have 11 months to make up for those 7 days. I wanted to point out one thing here, that the salawat are obligatory on every Muslim. There is no exemption basically here. He said al-Haj wa nufasa, no exemption for anyone. There is no exemption for the one who's sick, unless you're in coma. And that is basically loss of intellect. And then with loss of intellect, nothing is obligatory on you, right? But if you are so sick, that you can't move any limb, any part of your body, you pray in your heart. That's it. And you intend that this is ruku', this is sujood, this is this, this is that. But you pray in your heart if you cannot move any part of your body. Then he said, فَمَنْ جَحَدَ وُجُوبَهَا لِجَهْلِهِ عُرِّفَ ذَلِكَ وَإِنْ جَحَدَهَا عِنَادًا كَفَرَ. Whoever rejects its obligation out of ignorance should be educated about it. If he rejects it out of stubbornness, he becomes a disbeliever. If he rejects it out of stubbornness, he becomes a disbeliever. So keep in mind, people who are new to Islam, they may be unaware of the obligation. You need to teach them. But you also have to have the knowledge to teach them. And you have to have the authority to establish the plea against them. So for people who are new to Islam, and they say people who grew up in remote areas, who are completely unaware of the teachings of Islam and so on, they may not know. They may not know. So they must be educated about the obligation. There is no discussion about people who reject the obligation of the prayer. There is a consensus that is more established than the sun in the middle of a summer day. There's like a complete consensus. This is what consensus is about. If you want to talk about consensus, this is a consensus that is beyond any doubt. That the one who basically defies the obligation of the prayer, rejects the obligation of the prayer, is a disbeliever, given that he is not jahil. But once the jahl is removed, once the ignorance is removed, then he is a disbeliever. And now keep in mind that is salah as in salah, not salah as in your own vision of salah. So you can't tell me that salah means salah, it's a connection, and I have my connection, and I connect with Allah on my own terms, and stuff like this. This talk here about the rejection of the prayers, it is not about the prayers in your dictionary. It's about the Muslims' prayer, that all the Muslims agree that this is how people should be praying. It's 5 times a day. It has certain pillars. You stand before Allah. Okay. Then what about the person who does not reject it but fails to observe the prayers out of callousness, tahawun, I guess, or out of laziness? And callousness, they always put them together, takasul and tahawun, but they are really different. They're different, aren't they? Someone who's callous, someone who's indifferent, someone like who's versus someone who's too lazy. And hopefully that there would be no Muslims who are indifferent. Hopefully for the real Muslims who have faith in their heart. It is about laziness. The reason why they do not pray is that they are just too lazy. For those people who are too lazy, or they abandon the prayer out of laziness, the scholars disagreed over their ruling. We said if they rejected, they're kuffar by consensus. But what if they abandon the prayer because they are just lazy? Then you will have a disagreement between the scholars. I would begin by the position of the madhab, because we're trying to basically sort out the madhab for your learning, and then I will mention the position of the majority. So the position of the madhab is not only a Hanbali position, to be honest with you. Ibn Hazm rahimahullah says, I had received reports from 17 companions and tabi'een that the one who abandons the prayer is a kafir. The one who does not pray is a kafir. And he reported this from Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and many others from the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, and said that this is the position of Abdullah ibn Mubarak, Ishaq ibn Rahoya, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. Ishaq ibn Rahoya went in fact as far as reporting a consensus. And this is not a consensus that is reported by Ibn al-Munzir or somebody. This is a consensus that is reported by Ishaq ibn Rahoya. I mean, I'm not belittling Ibn al-Munzir in any way. I'm just saying, but Ishaq ibn Rahoya is much earlier scholar than Ibn al-Munzir. So this is a consensus that Ishaq ibn Rahoya is reporting, that the one who abandons the prayer for any purpose, just any reason, abandons the prayer, is a disbeliever in the true sense of the word, a disbeliever, or the true sense of the word kafir. So that is a minority position, but yet it is not a small minority position. It's a minority position because it is the position of the Hanbali madhab. It's the position of 1 out of 4 madhab, but there are some Malikis who sided with the Hanbalis. Abdullah ibn Majishun sided with the Hanbalis, and there are some Malikis from Andalus who sided with the Hanbalis, and in fact, there is wajh in the madhab al-Shafi'i that sided with the Hanbalis. But the authorized predominant position in the 3 other madhab is that this person commits a type of kufr that is not the major kufr. It is the lesser kufr, not the greater kufr. It is al-kufr al-asghar, not al-kufr al-akbar. At the end of the day, it is worse than major sins, because not every major sin may be called kufr. Not every major sin may be called kufr, but tarku salah is called kufr according to the 4 madhahib. Now they disagree whether it's the greater or the lesser kufr, but they all call it kufr. And why do they have to call it kufr? Because the Prophet called it kufr. So they can't say it's not kufr, but then they would disagree over what type of kufr it is. But the Prophet called it kufr. And it is enough that he called it kufr, and it is enough that, you know, it's worse than major sins, because not every major sin is may be called kufr. And it is enough to begin with that your iman is subject of controversy. Like if for tariq salah, for the one who does not pray, it is sufficient deterrent for you and to shame you into prayer that the scholars disagree over whether you're Muslim or not. You know, there is a bona fide, you know, disagreement among the scholars from the time of the Sahaba and Tabi'een onward concerning your own faith. You know, some of the scholars are saying that you should not be buried with the believers. You could be buried wherever you want, but not with the believers, not in the cemeteries of the believers. That is the predominant position in the Hanbali madhab, because they say, you know, that the person is murtad. Okay, so so when we say Hanbali, we are not just saying that it was only Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Like I said, Ibn Hazm reported this from 17 companions and tabi'een. It is the position of Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. It is the position of Ishaq ibn Rahoya and many others of the contemporaries of Imam Ahmad and people before the Imam Ahmad. So the three other mazahib will say it is the lesser kufr, but all of them are saying it's the kufr. And then Hanbali will say it is greater kufr, meaning the bona fide kufr that people should not be, washed or shrouded like Muslims or buried in the Muslim cemeteries or basically taken care of by Muslims. Having said that, and I'll get into the discussion of the why they disagreed. But having said that, even in the Hanbali madhab, they say greater kufr, but when do they deem the person a kafir? He is deemed a kafir after he is brought before the judge, after the hujjah is established them, because they may know the obligation of prayer, but they may not know that it actually, according to this position, the abandonment makes you a kafir. So they may not be aware of this. So according to this position, which is the stricter position, it is not walking around and calling people kafir because they abandon the prayer. It is, according to even to this stricter position, it is people who had been presented before the court, that's the Shari'i court, and the plea is established against them, and they were asked to repent. And after the istitaba, they asked to repent for 3 days. They insisted on not praying. In some sense, they preferred death over praying. And so the scholars in this, on this side, they say it is inconceivable that someone will prefer death over praying and still have faith in their heart. So they call them kuffar. Kuffar. And they do not basically wash them, bury them in Muslim cemeteries, and so on and so forth. Now, for the 3 mazahib, they call this the lesser kufr. Why did they disagree? They disagreed because there are, statements, reports from the Prophet ﷺ. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ never put someone to death because they did not pray. Yes. Yeah.
So, for example, the imams that say, I will not marry this person to a girl because he doesn't pray and I hold the Hanbali position, they're being stricter than traditional Hanbalis? Like off the bat, I'm not conducting this.
If they call the person a kafir prior to this process, then that is a misrepresentation of the Hanbali position. But if they want to hold off until the plea is established, then it is their right. If they are Hanbali, that would be expected of them to hold off. I personally, as a Hanbali, do not recommend that they hold off. And if they want to get married, then just get them married according to the 3 other mazahib. It should be fine. So why did they disagree over this being greater or lesser kufr? There are many hadith. So there is a hadith of Buraida, for instance. That's the most common hadith that is mentioned in this regard. بين الرجل والكفر والشرك ترك الصلاة. This hadith was reported by Sunan, Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi and so on, Nasa'i and Ibn Majah. It is reported by Sunan from Buraida that the Prophet ﷺ said, بين الرجل والكفر ترك الصلاة. There is nothing between man and this belief except the abandonment of prayers. So if you take the Hanbali position, Ishaq ibn Rahoya's positions, Abdullah ibn Mubarak's position, that it is the greater kufr, you will say there is nothing between man and this belief except the abandoned prayer. He abandoned the prayers, he becomes a disbeliever.
But isn't the salah connection? The connection to Allah? The salah is the connection to Allah. So the person in essence, he did not reject Allah, but he's saying here I'm busy doing other things because of his laziness.
No, but when the Prophet talks about the salah, he's not talking about the connection. He's talking about those 5 prayers that we perform every day, Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib, and Isha. So he says, بين الرجل والكفر ترك الصلاة, between man and disbelief is the abandonment of prayers. Then to this group, it makes sense that the person becomes a disbeliever. Now the 3 mazahib, Hanafi, Maliki, and Shafi'i, how would they answer this hadith? They say that there is nothing, that is the barrier between him and kufr. So once the barrier is removed, he can very easily fall into kufr. So that is basically what is keeping him from kufr. Once the barrier is removed, you're standing on the edge of the cliff. And then you could tip into kufr easily. Right? يؤول فعله إلى الكفر. It ends up leading you to kufr. It takes you to kufr. To abandon the prayer, it brings you into kufr. It does not result immediately in kufr, but it leads you to kufr. But you're not kafir until you become kafir. And that is basically by rejecting what made you Muslim. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله. Okay, so recorded my betrayal of the Hanbali madhab, I do actually believe in the position of the majority. It's a little betrayal here, but the position of the majority in this regard is stronger. Because nothing removes you from faith except that which brought you into rejection or denial of that which brought you into faith. You were brought into faith by saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. The people who abandon the prayer out of laziness are continuously saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They're actually, even if you go sit with them at the coffee shop in the worst place in Egypt, and they're smoking whatever they are smoking, they've never prayed, or they have not prayed for the last 10 or 15 years, and you basically poke Islam in any way, they'll just jump on you and basically beat you up. They're just genuinely Muslim. They say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah genuinely, with complete faith and not complete faith, because complete faith would have made them pray, but with true faith. They do believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Now, but this is not the only hadith. The Prophet ﷺ also said in this hadith of Jabir, radiallahu anhu, al-Ahd alladhi baynana. This hadith also is an important one. العهد الذي بيننا وبينها الصلاة بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. So this hadith of Jabir radiallahu anhu, العهد الذي, the covenant between us and them, the covenant that discerns us from them. That's what it means. The covenant that discerns us from them. Who are them? Kuffar, the disbelievers. The covenant that discerns us from them is salah. فَمَنْ تَرَكَهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. So whoever abandons it, he committed disbelief. He becomes a disbeliever. Kafir. So the Prophet said this. So now the 3 mazahib who say that this is the lesser kufr, they cannot say it's not kufr, because you just can't belie the Prophet. He said kufr, it's kufr. But then they would say it is the lesser kufr. And then they will, why will they say it's the lesser kufr? all of those ahadith imply kufr, but they are not decisive that it is the greater kufr that removes you from faith completely. Because if the ahadith said that he will be eternally in the hellfire, then they would have been explicit on this being a greater kufr. But the hadith talked about kufr, and there are other hadith that talk about kufr concerning things that are not major kufr. So there is still room for the three other madhahib to interpret those hadith to mean it is the lesser kufr, not the greater kufr. There is one report from Abdullah ibn Shaqiq, however, that is most troublesome for people who hold the position that it is the lesser kufr, not the greater kufr. And I find this to be the strongest proof for the group of scholars who say it's the greater kufr, not the lesser kufr. Abdullah ibn Shaqiq said that كان أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يعدون شيئا من الأعمال تركه كفر إلا الصلاة. The companions of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم never regarded the abandonment of any deed as an act of kufr, except the abandonment of salah. Now, you could certainly say this is abandonment out of juhud, abandonment out of denial, out of rejection. But what if you abandon fasting out of rejection? Doesn't that make you a kafir also? So why would Abdullah ibn Shaqiq single out the prayers in this sense? Then it means that the abandonment of the prayers is different from the abandonment of fasting, because the Sahaba discerned between them. The Sahaba did not treat them the same way. They considered the abandonment of the prayer to be kufr, but they did not consider the abandonment of fasting to be kufr. Although abandonment out of denial or rejection of both must be kufr. What if you deny fasting? You deny the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم. What if you deny this? Isn't that kufr? It's kufr. I find no good answer to this, by the way. There is no good answer, except to say that this is the understanding of Abdullah ibn Shaqiq. Or the Sahaba he met. But you get yourself in more trouble if you challenge the Sahaba that he met. Yes. Because Abdullah ibn Shaqiq is an older tabi'i. Yes.
There's also a version in Sahih Muslim that mentions that Bain al-Rajul wa shirk is Iman, and he mentions shirk instead of kufr. And they all considered shirk a major, not a minor type of kufr. So there's a version, hadith of Jabir, he mentions that the difference in the shirk.
Bain al-Rajul wal shirk, yes.
So that could be also.
But there could be shirk asghar.
So could we say that maybe
lesser shirk?
Rather, the killing could be what is debated, because I know Abu Hanifa said we would consider him kafir, but we wouldn't kill him.
Abu Hanifa would not consider him kafir the greater kufr. He would consider him kafir the lesser kufr. They don't disagree over the one who denies it. The one who denies it is by consensus the greater kufr. They disagree. The controversy is about the one who fails to perform the prayers out of laziness. What is his ruling?
They wouldn't order him to be killed, correct?
Hanafis, no. I am coming to this. I'm coming to the ruling of it. But then, okay, so what makes me side with the majority if I have this discomfort, reinterpreting the statement of Abdullah ibn Shaqiq? It is troublesome, and will continue to be troublesome for people that do not believe in the greater kufr of the one who abandons the prayer. But this very hadith of Ubadah ibn Samit should be troublesome for our Hanbali position also. Because this hadith, look at the end of the hadith. He who does not diligently observe them will have no covenant with Allah. If he wills, he will torment him, and if he wills, he will forgive him. So the one who does not pray is subject to forgiveness. The kafir is not a candidate for forgiveness. The one who does not pray is a candidate for forgiveness. How do the Hanbalis get out of this? They say Hafiz is different from praying. Hafiz is diligently observed. If he does not diligently observe the prayers, it does not mean that he did not pray. It just meant that he was not really very adherent to the prayers and the timings and all of that stuff, and did not do them in the proper way, establish them in the proper way, and so on and so forth. You'll find that but at the end of the day, the Prophet ﷺ talked about two categories, and it could be used by the majority still, that he sorted out two categories. One category that prays, and the other category should be the category that did not pray. And the minority, they say, as Ibn Hazm reported, that one who fails to observe one prayer intently until the time came out is considered murtad. So he fails, he Salat al-Asr, and he sits down and intentionally, he has the ability to pray, but he intentionally sits down and does not pray until Maghrib comes in. That is murtad, according to this position. The other one that the Hadith al-Shafa'ah, you remember Hadith al-Shafa'ah, Hadith Abi Sa'id al-Khudri about Shafa'ah, it's reported by Muslim and others, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فَيَقْبِضُ اللَّهُ قَبْضَةً أَوْ قَبْضَتَيْنِ نَاسٌ لَمْ يَعْمَلُوا خَيْرًا قَطْ. People who have never, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grabs a handful or two handfuls out of the hellfire, removes them from the hellfire. People who have never done any good in their lives. It means people that have faith, that they have La ilaha illallah, but they have never done any good in their lives. And these people will be removed by the shafa'ah of whom? Allah Himself. After the mu'mineen and everyone got to make the shafa'ah, intercede, and everybody gets removed from paradise, Allah will take out of the hellfire, Allah will take out of the hellfire a handful or two handfuls of people who have never done any good. Now, people who have never done any good are people who have not prayed, because the salah is good, is khair. So people who have never done any good means people who have never prayed, also never prayed. But how do the Hanbalis answer this hadith? They could say that they have not known about the obligation of prayer, they have not gotten a chance to pray because they became Muslim right before the prayer, said La ilaha illallah, and then they died, or something of that nature, and they did not get to pray for. But again, the implication of the hadith, the apparent implication of the hadith, that these are people who had the chance to do good, but did not do good, including the prayers. The bottom line also is that Islam, people enter this, religion by their genuine belief and also utterance of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, genuine belief in and utterance of the statement of faith, the kalima, La ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. People who are continuously acknowledging the kalima in their heart, on their tongue, will continue to be Muslim until something removes them from that. Well, let's say someone basically curses Allah. Well, that removes you from La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Someone prostrates to an idol intentionally, knowingly, how to worship the idol. That removes you from La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. It clearly removes you. But something that does not remove you from the explicit implications of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah will not remove you from Islam. Okay. And that is a wajh in the madhab and the madhab as well. That's not the dominant view in the madhab, but that is a view in the Hanbali madhab as well. So there is a view in the Hanbali madhab that agrees with the view of the majority that one who abandons the prayer out of laziness is not kafir in the sense of greater kufr or absolute kufr, but he committed an act of disbelief worse than major sins. and certainly is in danger. All of them say that he's in danger and that his abandonment of the prayers may lead him into major kufr. Then he said, وَلَا يَحِلُّ تَأْخِيرُهُ عَنْ وَقْتِ وُجُوبِهَا إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَرَادَ جَمْعَهَا أَوْ مُشْتَغِلٍ بِشَرْطِهَا. It is not permissible to defer it beyond its mandated time except for one who intends to combine it, that is to combine it with the following prayer, if it is combinable. So what is combinable? Dhuhr and Maghrib only. Those are the two that you could defer until their time is out. Because you could combine Dhuhr with Asr, and you could combine Maghrib with Isha. And because of the disagreement between the scholars about the conditions for combining, even if you don't have an excuse to combine, and you just combine, they will not call this disbelief. So that is why I talked about Asr. You let Asr run out, time of Asr run out. This group of scholars who believe it's the greater disbelief will consider you a murtad. Okay. So لمن أراد جمعها أو مشتغل بشرطها, except for one. So the one who has an excuse to let the time of the prayer go out is one who wants to combine it with the next prayer, or one who is working to fulfill its conditions. He woke up and he is in a state of janaba, so he runs to the bathroom to have a ghusl, or he woke up and he does not have wudu. He just remembered that he did not pray Asr and the time for Maghrib is approaching, and he has only 2 seconds to Maghrib and he does not have wudu. He runs and fulfills that prerequisite, that shart al-sahha, that basically prerequisite of validity of the prayer. He needs to pray, he needs the prayer to be valid. Part of the validity is the prerequisites. So he makes sure that there is no najasa and that he has wudu and so on and so forth. This person will be forgiven. This person will be forgiven for letting the time come out. فَإِن تَرَكَهَا تَهَاوُنًا, and then we will come to, the tough one. فَإِن تَرَكَهَا تَهَاوُنًا بِهَا اسْتُتِيبَ ثَلَاثًا فَإِن تَابَ وَإِلَّا قُتِلَ. So if one abandons it out of carelessness, he must be asked 3 times to repent for it, or over 3 days to repent for it. If he does not, he must be killed. Okay. Now this is the position of not only the Hanbalis, then 2 other madhahib will join in. 2 other madhahib who said that he's not kafir will join the Hanbali in this punishment, which is a capital punishment. They consider the abandonment of prayer to be a capital offense, capital crime. Remember, the Shara'i rulings are all about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So things that may not be considered an issue in secular court, they are an issue in a Shara'i court because it is about your relationship with Allah. It's a different paradigm, completely different paradigm. So they consider this to be a capital offense. Yet, even the Hanbalis who consider this to be an act of kufr, how do you get out of this punishment of death? To pray. No, even easier. Tell them I'll pray at home. That's it. They let you go. So what does that mean? It means that they are deterring open defiance, open rebellion against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His rulings. That's what they're trying to deter. But you simply say to them, I'll pray at home. Okay, go ahead, go home, pray. And they will believe you that you'll pray at home. And they will not come with you home to actually verify that you prayed. They'll just let you go. So these things are extremely important for us to understand, because if you don't understand these nuances or these details, you will have a skewed understanding of the religion.
Is there
Like
is there any instances in history where someone was that hard-headed that they said, no, I'm not going to pray neither, and so there was an execution?
Historical accounts, the one who is good at historical accounts of these things is Dr. Jonathan Brown.
Okay.
I don't really keep track of the historical accounts of punishments and so on, but he's good at. But within certainly during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it would not be a historical account. It would be part of the Sharia. So there is none during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But afterwards, historical accounts and history of the Sharia courts and so on, and Dr. Brown does a good job at this. Going back to this issue, is this piece of information important for us to know? Particularly when we discuss this issue, particularly when people talk to you about this issue, this is a very vital piece of information to know, because it will change your outlook, your perspective completely. It will change your understanding of this punishment. So why are they inflicting this punishment? This is really, it's not about inquisition. It is not about locking you up in the basement of a masjid like the Inquisition. You remember the Inquisition, and basically forcing you to confess the wrongdoing so that you could be executed. That was what the Inquisition was about. It is basically forcing you to committing to wrongdoing so that you may be executed. Here you are not brought to the basement of the masjid, but you are brought to like a square or like a place where there is a court and the judge and so on. And the judge tells you, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not praying? And you simply tell the judge, well, just let me go home. I'll pray at home. And then the judge lets you go home, so that you don't openly rebel against the Shara of Allah or defy the Shara of Allah. Now, this is the position of the Malikis, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis. The Hanafis said no, you get locked up until you pray. There is no capital punishment for the abandonment of prayer. According to the Hanafi position, you get locked up until you actually pray. If you need to discuss issues of hudud and legal punishments and shara'i rulings and shara'i, the shara'i court system and so on, with people who come from a completely different paradigm, Westerners who come from a completely different paradigm, even Muslims who are Westerner and who may have discomfort and aversion, whatever they have in their hearts to these rulings, and they don't really understand the breadth of these rulings and the foundation, the rationale of these rulings. One of the things that I want you to do, first, justification. You could certainly talk about comparison, and comparison helps a great deal. So in the Bible, the persons who gather sticks on the Sabbath get stoned to death. And gathering sticks on the Sabbath is a capital punishment, and it warrants stoning to death. And this has been executed throughout the history until basically the 4th century AD, when it was not doable anymore because they lost. There were no Shara'i courts for them. They were subjects to other nations, the Romans, this and that. So they decided that since there are no Shara'i or biblical courts, that these punishments will not be applicable anymore. That is what Muslims say, that these punishments are limited to the Shara'i courts. They are not applicable outside of that realm. But comparison is helpful. Justification, rational justification is helpful. But at the end of the day, when they talk to you about contemporary implementation, what are you guys going to do about this now in your countries? I just want you to be humble enough to not usurp the right of Muslim legislatures all over the Muslim countries, Muslim scholars, Muslim muftis, Muslim judges. None of your business. You just get out of it. None of your business. You don't have the capacity to discuss those issues. Who are you? Leave this. Don't usurp the right of, not by negation or affirmation. So not by saying, yeah, we will do everything, you know, everything will be done and so on, and all of those punishments will be implemented. It is still none of your business. Or go to the other extreme and say, no, this stuff is not applicable anymore, and, you know, we should not be doing this. Or even some of the Muslims can come on TV and say much worse things and make much worse statements. None of you, who are you? Even if you are a scholar, even if you are a professor of law, whatever you are, none of you are too insignificant. You are just like a piece of dust. You're nothing. Really, just know your value. Be humble enough to know who you are. Please be humble enough. Please don't have certainty where you should not have certainty. Please don't have the hastiness of youth. I tend to believe that sometimes youth or being young is an intellectual disability. Forgive me, I'm sorry. No. But forgive me. I know that this is like inflammatory, but forgive me. Because there is so much yet to learn and to experience and to understand and to digest and to absorb, even information that you possess. There is so much yet to digest them. Over time, you will change your views. What does it mean that Imam Ahmad changed his views 8 times regarding one issue? And he used to change his views all the time. It means that over time, people actually ponder over what they have learned. They learn more, and they ponder over what they have learned, and they acquire more experience, more insight into the very information that they may have learned when they are 15. Processing of this information requires more wisdom, more experience, more insight. Yes, the Prophet sent Usama and Mu'adh ibn Jabal and this and that, and they were young, and none of the Khulafa was less than 50 when they became a Khalifa. All of those people were working under the directions. All of those youth who were sent here and there, they were working under the directorship or the direction of someone who was much older. Any of the Khalifas became a Khalifa when he was 50, less than 50? No, not. In fact, it was a factor. When they decided between Ali and Uthman, Uthman's age was a factor in favor of Uthman. So, forgive me, I do not mean to be insulted, but what I'm trying to tell you is just wait a little bit. You know, give yourself time. Don't be hasty. Experience, more wisdom, more insight will allow you to develop basically the faculties to process those information in a much better way. For the time being, and keep in mind, if you're 60 years old and you're a scholar and professor of law, defer to the Muslim muftis wherever they are. Defer to the Muslim legislatures wherever they are. Defer to Hayat al-Fatwa. Tell the people, I am not the one who's in charge of this. There are, you know, Hayat Kibar al-Ulama here, Majma' al-Buhuth al-Islamiyya, Majma' al-Fiqh, this and that. Defer to someone who does have not only the knowledge, but the authority. Because people who have the authority and endowed with making those decisions, they will study them much better than you. And they will study all of the sort of surrounding circumstances. Their judgment will be better than you. So the people who are in, let's say, Pakistan or Morocco, the muftis in Pakistan or Morocco, they will be presented with all the, you know, that the circumstances, the different forces that affect their fatwa, and they have more knowledge than you, and they do this collectively as a board or a council or so on, defer to them. And don't usurp that right. It is not your right. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.